Tonight we're doing two Parashiot, Parashat Behar and Bechukotai. Very important Parashiot. A lot of lessons to be learned. One of the ta'avot, one of the desires that human beings have that greatly interfere with the service of Hashem, that give us a hard time, is the ta'avat ha-kesef. The fact that the human being has a lust, a desire, an interest in money. This money attracts the human being very, very much for one reason, and that is because it gives him a false sense of security. If I have money, it will protect me. It will allow me to buy whatever it is I need. It's a certain security that every human being wants to have. But it's a false sense of security. As Shlomo Melech says, there are times that all the money in the world will not help you. As the Pasuk says, Lo yo'il hon beyom evra. When the day comes for one to return his soul to his Creator, all the money of the world will not help him hold that day back. There are times that all this money cannot help you. Nevertheless, that is the human instinct that everybody in different degrees has to pursue this money. And what happens when one pursues this money too much, this money turns into an idol. An idol doesn't have to be something made out of stone or a golden calf that when we imagine about idols, that is what perhaps we think about first. An idol is anything that one worships, that one gives too much of his time, something that does not deserve as much time and effort in our attention. Something which is not real. Nevertheless, we consider it an idol, we worship it because we feel it gives us security, it protects us, it blesses us, and so forth. Other than, of course, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But that is the danger that money has. In wanting this very, very much, in pursuing this, there is that possibility that this money will convert and be an idol. And once something becomes an idol, it tends to influence everything we do in life. And since this tends to influence, it may be a problem for Am Yisrael, for the Jewish people, who have a mission, a task, and that is to serve Hashem. And in order to fulfill this mission properly, we were given certain mitzvot, certain rules, stay away from this, do this, in order for us to get to our final destination, in order for us to fulfill our mission. And as we've explained in the past, with tum'ah, with impurity, there are many forces out there that can interfere and give us a hard time from doing our job properly. Today we're going to talk a little bit about money. We spoke already about tum'ah and kedusha, about holiness, purity and impurity, and how they affect us. But money is another problem. Money affects even the best of us. It's very, very powerful. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is aware of that. And in order for us to have better control over our destiny and not being influenced by all these forces, including money, Hashem gave us many mitzvot for our own benefit. As we're going to see, the mitzvot is not only a means for us to be rewarded. You do this mitzvah, you'll be rewarded. It's not only a way to bond with Hashem. Many of the mitzvot, perhaps all of them, I should say every one of them, is for our benefit. Somehow we derive a benefit from fulfilling this mitzvah in Olam Hazeh, in this world. There are certain mitzvot, therefore, in Parashat Behar, that will help us with this problem called money, with this lust, with this desire, with this potential elil, potential idol. We began by explaining that money offers a false sense of security. And because of that, Hashem says it's not enough for a Jew to have emunah. Emunah means I believe in God. I have faith that He created the world. He exists. That's not enough. What's necessary is something called bitachon. It's not enough that we believe. Many people believe. But do they trust in Hashem? Do they fully trust in Him? That He provides us with parnasah, with our livelihoods? That He's the one that protects us, not Uncle Sam? All of that, the answers to all those questions depend on if one has bitachon or not. Many Jews have emunah. They believe. It makes sense to them. You don't even have to prove it to them. It's logical that evolution is a sham. I mean, there's no such thing as evolution. There's no such thing as Big Bang. Common sense says that there must be an engineer, some intelligent mind that designed all of this. You may want to call it something else. We call it HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We call it Ein Sof, using the terminology of the Kabbalah. Something that's infinite, something that we cannot describe. We know He created the world, He created every one of us. But does He manage the world? Does he control everything that goes on? Is he aware of everything? There are many varieties here. How extensive is this philosophy, is this belief of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? How much influence does he have in this world that he created? That depends on if we have bitachon in him or not. So emunah can be very simple. And even in emunah there are various levels. Bitachon is a whole different story. There are many Jews who are religious, fulfill mitzvot, but are lacking in bitachon b'Hashem. And unfortunately for them, this is something extremely important to have. If you have bitachon, you're in a much higher level. Your way of doing things and your outlook is completely different than one who has no bitachon. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants Am Yisrael to have bitachon, to have trust in him, to rely on him, and not just to have faith. And what will this bitachon do? This bitachon, this true bitachon in Hashem, will release him, will free him from having bitachon in other things that he should not have bitachon, like the money. What did we say before? One tends to have this dependency on money because it offers him this false sense of security. If one develops true bitachon b'Hashem, he will not depend and rely on money anymore. He will not need to rely on that. The various mitzvot in Parashat Behar, therefore, accomplish the following. Number one, they help us develop midat bitachon. Number two, they help us free ourselves from a dependency on money. And number three, they help us develop sensitivity towards our fellow Jew. Let's begin with the mitzvot that deal with midat bitachon. One of the most famous mitzvot that are intended to instill in us bitachon is mitzvat Shemitah. There are other mitzvot, but this is one of the most famous ones, because this is a very, very unique mitzvah, and even though there may be other ideas behind it, it is mostly intended to develop our bitachon. What's Shemitah? Imagine Am Yisrael back then, a very agricultural society, told to take 1 year off. We're not taking off 1 day, 1 week, or 1 month. 1 year you don't work your fields, you don't toil the fields. You cannot cultivate the land. How will we have parnasah? If we don't grow, we don't work the fields, how are we going to eat? And the Torah actually says that. You may ask, after I commanded you with this mitzvah, how will we survive? And Hashem says, don't worry. If you keep this mitzvah of Shemitah, that once every 7 years, the 7th year, there's no work, it's a sabbatical, I will bless you on the 6th that you should have for 3 years. You will have for the 6th, you will have for the entire 7th year, and even for a portion of the 8th year until you manage to grow the new crop. That's an incredible promise. And the rabbis tell us that this is an additional proof that the Torah could only have been given by Hashem and not by Moshe Rabbeinu. What human being could make such a promise and deliver? How could someone say, I will give you 3 years, and you don't work 1 year and you get 3 years worth? It has to be that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a promise and he could deliver it. And Am Yisrael had many, many years, many Shemitot, the opportunity to prove this or to disprove this, Halilah. But it was always true. So long as they kept the Shemitah, they were able to see Ashgaha Peratit, Ashgaha Yonah, they were able to see this divine providence where they were blessed and they had no problems with Parnasah. Through the mitzvah of Shemitah, therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to strengthen our bitachon, our reliance in him, by reminding us the Parnasah comes from the Shamayim, not through your PhD, not through your career, not through how much time and effort you invest in your work. It's all been decided min hashamayim. Obviously one has to do an ishtadlut, one has to write a resume, one has to do whatever he can to find himself a job and to keep his job. But other than that, everything depends on what HaKadosh Baruch Hu has decided. That's called bitachon. If you have true bitachon b'Hashem, then you have no doubts, no qualms about it. That's the way it is. Hashem decides how much money you will make, nothing else. It's a very difficult area, very difficult point for beginners to understand. And even not beginners. You mean if I get a higher degree, that does not guarantee I will have a better salary, a better job? Not necessarily. Maybe yes, maybe not. It depends on your mazal, what mazal Hashem gave you. As we've said in the past, in every career you will find those who are wealthier and those who are not as successful. It all depends on what mazal HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given one. It all depends on what Hashem decided on Rosh Hashanah, what will be this man's destiny for the year. What will be his parnasah. Throughout the 40 years that Am Yisrael was in the desert, we saw something very strange. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was testing us. He kept Am Yisrael from having water for 3 days. He made them thirsty, which started them to it got them to complain. But why? Why don't you give them water right away? I wanted to teach them a lesson. When you run out of water, what do? You turn to me. You don't cry, you don't complain. You just turn and ask me nicely. You pray. That shows that you rely on me. Somebody is sick in the family, Chas Shalom. Of course you should go to a doctor. Of course you should seek an expert. But we should not forget, He's the ultimate doctor. The human doctors are only shaliachim, messengers. Let's not forget who is the one that cures. And it's not the doctor down here, he's just a messenger. In order to instill in us these ideas that Am Yisrael did not know, was not aware when they left Egypt, they were aware that Hashem exists, that they knew, that they were taught. Vayaminu b'Hashem u'Moshe avdo. It became a fact. They became even more reassured and convinced when they saw the miracles of Egypt and Kriyat Yamsuf, the part of the Red Sea, but they still did not have bitachon. They were fed 40 years of man min hashamayim. Why did they need this bread coming down from heaven? Hashem could not provide for them food in the desert in some other way. Let them remember that food comes down from above. Hashem provides the parnasah. All of this was to teach them lessons. You want to know how I manage this world? You want to know what happens when there is no food? What it means? You're going to learn for the next 40 years. This is going to be a laboratory where there are going to be many experiments, and you're going to see, observe, and learn how Hashem does things in the world, why things happen. We will never understand everything, but a good deal we will understand. So many of the challenges that Am Yisrael faced in the desert were purely to teach them bitachon. Trust in Him, rely on Him, turn to Him. If Shemitah was such a powerful lesson in bitachon, then why did it happen that Am Yisrael became weaker and weaker in their faith in Hashem and stopped keeping Shemitah? They saw the blessing. They saw it many, many times. So why did they stop keeping Shemitah? And as a result of not keeping Shemitah, we were thrown out of Eretz Yisrael. We were exiled. Why did they stop keeping Shemitah? It's a very, very difficult thing to understand. They saw it clearly, that what the Torah promised, it delivered. So why stop? The answer to this is because they lost something called tamimut. The Torah says, Tamim tiyeh Hashem elokecha. What does tamim mean? You can translate tamim as sincere, and you can also translate the word tamim as complete. Lashon tamim, shlemut. Be tamim, be sincere, be complete in your faith with Hashem. Don't divide up your faith amongst other things. Trust only in Him and only in Him. Unfortunately, in that generation where the Shemitah became weaker, that generation got involved in Avodah Zarah. They started experimenting with other things. They were lured. They saw that the Goyim are interested in this, and they were curious. They got into it, and they saw that it's very interesting. Back then, we are told by the rabbis, there was a Yetzer Hara, believe it or not, a Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah. People actually loved it. It was interesting. It was, in some ways, effective. In some ways, because it has a koach, tum'ah. It has a certain power. And they were pulled in that direction. So they were splitting their interest, partly in Hashem, in the Torah, and partly in this. And you cannot split yourself in too many directions. Because what happens is one becomes weaker. And unfortunately, their connection to Torah mitzvot, which was very strong, became weaker and weaker. As a result of losing their tmimut, they lost their excitement for the mitzvot. And when you lose your excitement, the mitzvot become mitzvot anashim melumada. They become a routine. You no longer do it with the proper kavanah. You no longer understand what you're doing. It just becomes routine. The prayer becomes a routine. You're not even taking the moment to communicate with Hashem, which is really what a prayer is. Just a routine. Words are being said. And as a result of this routine, this lack of excitement, they lose that strong connection that they had before. A connection of a father and a son, where the father means everything to the child. All of a sudden, the child has other interests. The father is no longer at the center of his life. He does not only turn to him, he turns to others. And as a result of that, they cooled off in their interest of Shemitah. Let me give you an example of Tmimut. Just a quick story that illustrates what Tmimut is. There was once, I think this happened about 200, 250 years ago in Eretz Israel, outside of Yerushalayim lived a poor man. This poor man was ignorant. He did not learn a lot of Torah. And in order for him to keep track of when the holidays are, all the major events in Judaism, he would come to Yerushalayim every so often. He would go to the rabbi, please write me down what's coming this week, what's coming in 2 weeks from now, what's coming in 3 weeks from now. So I should know what to do, because I live a few miles out of town, and I will not be aware. So that is the way he conducted his affairs and led a Jewish life. One time he came to Yerushalayim, and he sees that the streets are empty. He says, what happened? Where's everybody? And finally somebody told him that everybody's in Bet HaKnesset. They're fasting. Fasting? He felt terrible. I was not told that today is a fast, and I ate this morning. And he felt terrible. How come they didn't tell me? He ran to his rabbi, why didn't you tell me that today is a fast day? Today is not a regular fast day. We just got together recently and decided that today should be a fast day because there hasn't been rain for a long time. And this is terrible. There's no rain, there's no water. We depend on this. So we made a fast, a day of prayer, and that is why everybody's in the shul. For that you make a day of prayer, and for that you fast? When you have no rain, you have to run to the shul? Well, the rabbi turns to the poor man, to the simple man, to this tamim man. Well, what do you do when there's no rain? Rabbi, what do I do when there's no rain? I go outside to my backyard, and I lift my eyes to heaven, and I say, Father, Abba, I need rain. Without this rain, I can't survive. I don't fast, and I don't call the whole community for this. He says, really? And when you call to Hashem, He answers, of course, right away. The clouds come and there's rain. You know what? Maybe you should be our Hazan today. Come, you pray. And as soon as he went, no monkey business, pure sincerity from the bottom of his heart, he says, Hashem, how could you let your children die of starvation? They need rain. And he cried his heart out. And sure enough, after a couple hours or so, the rain came. That is an example of tmimut. No monkey business, no questions asked. Hashem is everything to me. I rely only on Him. That's it. Tamim. That's it. Sincerity. Am Yisrael, as a result of becoming interested in all the havalim and all the vanities, and especially Avodah Zarah, they lost that kesher, that tmimut with Hashem, and as a result of that, they cooled off to the mitzvot. Even though they saw it, it was clear that Hashem delivered. He promised and He delivers. But they cooled off. They became interested in other things too, unfortunately. What was the punishment for not keeping Shemitah? Am Yisrael was exiled. Why are we exiled? What does exile have to do with Shemitah, with not keeping Shemitah? Hashem reminds us, you're not the boss of the land. I told you to keep Shemitah. I'm the boss of the land. You don't keep it, I will teach you this lesson. So Am Yisrael was exiled out of the land. It was removed from that land, thinking that they were the boss, that they were in control, that they decided what to do, when to do. But even in the exile, a great miracle occurred. And the Torah predicts this. The Torah predicts that even when Am Yisrael will go into Galut, no other nation in the world, while Am Yisrael is spending time in the diaspora scattered all over the globe, no other nation, no other empire will be able to occupy, inhabit the land, and develop it. Nations came and went, but nobody remained there and redeveloped this country. It was barren. Up until Mark Twain's visit in the late 1800s, the land was barren. There were camels, donkeys, and very few inhabitants, very few Jews. Just now recently, Am Yisrael is returning back to the land. But so long as we were in the diaspora, the Torah predicts, and that is exactly what happened, no other nation will be able to reoccupy and redevelop the land and make it theirs. Why not? Because it's not theirs. It belongs to Am Yisrael. Hashem is safeguarding it for His children when they come back. Even though we were punished and we were thrown out, nobody else was going to rob it from us. The fact that we have a problem with Ishmael, with the Arabs today, is something different. It's a lecture in itself. But neither the Arabs who are there and who are giving us a hard time, neither they were able to develop that land. The land was barren. You didn't have Jaffa oranges 100 years ago. All the tomatoes, all the produce that is being exported. That is only true when Am Yisrael, when the children who belong in that land come back to its land. So that was the Shemitah, to instill in us Midat HaBitachon. The next mitzvah that appears in Parashat Behar is the Yovel, the Jubilee year, that would occur every 50 years. What was the idea behind the Yovel? One idea was, She'en shum davar litzmitut. Nothing is for eternity. You think you're going to hold on to something forever? There's no such thing as forever After 50 years, whatever you bought goes back to its original owner, with a few exceptions. But especially the fields that were bought, they can only be bought until the Yovel. The best example in today's terms is a 99-year lease. I'm sure many of you have heard it. 99, it's yours for 99 years. But after that, it goes back to the original owner. Even though you built it, you built the building, 100-story skyscraper on it, the land is not yours. After 99 years, it goes back. That was the idea of the Yovel. She'en shum davar letzmitud, everything goes back to its original owners. You don't own something forever. Don't think that you're going to acquire it and it's going to be yours forever. Another idea that occurred in the Shemitah and in the Yovel was the Hafkarat HaSadot. Not only can you not develop the land, you had to give away the produce. Anybody can enter your field and eat from it. What's that for? Once every 7 years, and in the Yovel in the 50th year, Aniyim v'ashirim shavim, the poor and the rich were equal. Equality, because kili kol haaretz, the land belongs to Hashem, not to us. Therefore there was equality amongst the poor and the rich. Everybody can come and eat. Not only can everybody come and eat, but you had to be sensitive to those who did not have, and give them and help them. That is why you will find several pesukim that emphasize v'chiyamuch achicha. If your brother becomes poor, be sensitive. Think of him too. Be considerate. The fact that you were given more doesn't mean that you deserve more. Hashem simply entrusted in you this money in order that you help others. Every rich man, regardless of the source of his wealth, whether it's an inheritance, whether it's a successful real estate transaction, if one becomes wealthy, he should know that that is a nisayon. Automatically he's being tested. How is he going to put that wealth to use? Many people therefore do not want that challenge. Many people say, oh Hashem, please give me that challenge. I promise you I will build a Bet HaKnesset and I will build a yeshiva. Just give me the money first and then you'll see. But people forget that as the money grows, the Yetzer Hara grows along with it. And it becomes more and more difficult to part with your money. So Hashem therefore gives us all these mitzvot to help us with the maaser, with the various mitzvot that apply to one's field, that he has to give to the poor, that he has to give to the Levi, to the Kohen, to train a Jew to give, because it's something which is not easy. Another mitzvah that helps us have the proper outlook in life is the prohibition against charging interest. Now there are certain business transactions where interest is permissible if it is done according to the halacha through something called a heter iska. There are too many details involved and I'm not going to get into that. But ordinarily, if somebody asks you for a loan, for a favor, he wants to make a wedding right now, a nice wedding, not a luxurious wedding, and he needs $5,000. And you have the money, you are not allowed to charge interest. The one who lends cannot charge, the one who borrows cannot give. And the co-signers cannot be involved in a transaction where there is interest being charged. They're all guilty if interest was being charged. What's the problem with interest? You're not doing him a favor, you're doing yourself a favor by thinking you're getting richer as a result of charging more. Neshech v'tarbit. Why did those Torah call interest neshech? Because you're biting him. And it becomes more and more difficult for him eventually to pay you back. Since the Torah is interested in us doing favors to the other, not to ourselves, Torah says this is asur. Not only is this asur out of sensitivity and consideration for the poor man who needs a loan, but the Torah does not want us, as we said earlier, to become addicted to this ta'ava of kesef, more and more money. I'm going to charge 20% interest. I'm going to take advantage. After all, that's what the credit cards charge. I think it's 18%. They do it, why can't I do it? So in order to neutralize this ta'ava, this lust for the money, Torah says no, you cannot charge interest. Shemitah, the 7th year, the food is free. Anybody wants to enter your field and take, you can take. All of this mitzvot in order to free us from this dependency on the money. Another idea that is expressed towards the end of Parashat Bechukotai is midat ha'istapkut, to be content with what you have. And that is with the mitzvah of maaser behema. Very interesting mitzvah, that there is maaser, a tenth, given from the animals. You would give a tenth from the animals you have. And how would you do it? So the Mishnah describes that the animals would come out of the barn, and you would be holding a special stick, and you would mark the 10th one that left, and you say that one is Kodesh Lashem. So the question is, one rabbi asked, why did you have to have this ritual of having one by one come out? Why don't you just take the 10th and give it for Maaser? So this rabbi explained very nicely. Because as each one was coming out, what were you saying? This is mine. This is mine. This is mine. This is mine. This is 9 are yours and 1 is for Hashem. It's easier that way. See all of this that is yours? Only 1 belongs to Hashem. Only 1 is a Maaser. So therefore, each one that came out, he was saying, this is mine, this is mine, this is mine. It was easier, therefore, to give away that 10th one. Torah is teaching us midat ha'istabkut. Be content with what you have. You have so much. Give a little bit to the poor too. That is pretty much what goes on in Parashat Behar, even though there are other mitzvot. I want to go over to Parashat Bechukotai. Even though we said in the very beginning that the human being is not in full control over the land, as we've seen, unfortunately, we were exiled from the land. We were told to not work the land on the 7th year and in the Yovel year. And neither are we in control of our spirit. As Shlomo says, I don't remember the exact words, Aval kilo shalita adam lichlo et rucho, something like that. That the human being is not a complete shalit, he's not in complete control to hold back his ruach, his spirit, from leaving him. When the time comes, the spirit leaves him, and he cannot hold back to it. So there are certain things in life that we have no control over. But there is one area that we have control. And that is what the Pasuk tells us in Bechukotai telechu. When it comes to the chokim, to the mitzvot, to these instructions that we were given by Hashem, it is within our potential to fulfill. We have full control. We can decide tomorrow morning for the men if we're going to put on tefillin or not. We can decide if we're going to keep Shabbat or not, whether we're going to keep kosher or not. A woman decides if she's going to light candles for Shabbat or not. That's chokim, the chokim of the mitzvot of the Torah. Telechu. In that area of chokim mitzvot, we have free will. We have control. We can make the decision whether we will fulfill them or not. Now, you may say that there are certain situations where it's very difficult to fulfill the mitzvah, and we don't have control. I'm going to prove to you that even in the most difficult situations, Jews have shown that they have complete free will and control. The best, perhaps one example, I don't know if it's the best example, but a good example is several stories, several incidents from the Holocaust. There was an incident where Jews, as you know, in many of the camps, had very small rations of food given to them. Does anybody know what their rations consisted of? There was one important ingredient that the Germans made sure that these Jews received.
Potatoes and margarine.
Margarine. Why margarine? Because it supposedly gives them the strength, that little bit of nourishment, the fat. Hanukkah came, and the Jews did not know what to do. But we're going to have a Hanukkah, we're going to have oil. Where are we going to get oil from? The little bit of margarine that they needed for their sustenance, they used instead to light the Hanukkah, to light the menorah. They didn't have to do it. Hanukkah is midrabanan, it's a rabbinical decree, it's a custom. It's an important custom, it's a halacha. We need to do it. But it's not even written in the Torah. They were not willing to give it up even during these hard times where they had barely anything to eat. A little bit of margarine was used for Hanukkah. These examples of Mesirut Nefesh, during difficult times they were willing to sacrifice their lives. In Russia, in the winter, a woman needed to go to the mikveh. If there was no mikveh in her town, she went to the river. Well, the river was frozen. What did she do? She broke the ice. And she immersed herself. She came out a little bit blue, perhaps, but she did it, and it was dangerous. Some people went in and did not come out. They had to have somebody hold them. Mesirut Nefesh. In Matzada, if you go to Matzada, what do you find? Mikvaot. A Jew cannot continue to live as a Jew without a mikveh. How will he be with his wife? Life cannot continue for a Jew. Mikveh was therefore always the first thing. The Mesirut Nefesh. During communist Russia, Jews built mikvaot in their closets, in the basements. They went downstairs. Communists didn't allow it. They disposed of the dirt in some ingenious way so that they should not be suspected of constructing something illegally. Circumcision, wherever that was prohibited, was also done privately and quietly. So we see if a Jew wants to do it, there's nothing holding him back. But even if it requires Mesirut Nefesh, complete self-sacrifice. From the word telechu, Bechukotai telechu, commentaries say that a Jew should always demonstrate his Judaism regardless of where he is, where he goes. Telechu meaning you go, not only at home. Some people are good at home. They keep everything at home, but when they're outside, they eat everything, they do everything is okay. Bechukotai telechu means wherever you go, you demonstrate your Judaism openly. Do not be embarrassed. In Parashat Bechukotai, we find a tremendous, important rule in Judaism, a very significant klal. And that is what we say in Echa, on Tisha B'Av, we read from the Megillat Echa, Mipi Elyon lo tetzeh haraot. A very important rule, a very important hashkafa, that when something negative, something bad happens, it does not happen from above. From above, nothing bad comes down. Then why do we see many terrible things? It's because we brought it upon ourselves. Parashat Bechukotai is one of the most important parashiyot, perhaps, in communicating several important lessons to us. Lesson number one, whatever happens to Am Yisrael, whatever happens to an individual Jew, it's because of his action, because of Am Yisrael's actions. Nothing happens haphazardly, by chance. Everything, of course, happens by the will of Hashem, but we are the ones that brought it upon us, whether it's something positive or whether it's something negative. And I very much recommend reading Parashat Bechukotai from the beginning to the end, and you will see why soon. It offers us tremendous amount of information on how Hashem manages this world, why certain things happen. In the very beginning, or the first half of Parashat Bechukotai, the Torah basically describes that the material situation of Am Yisrael, the physical material status of Am Yisrael, whether we are prospering or whether we are struggling, depends on our actions, on our maasim. In Bechukotai telechu or not. If you follow Hashem's mitzvot or not. If you follow, you will prosper. If you don't follow, you will not prosper. And the Torah, in the very beginning of Parashat Bechukotai, describes three important areas where you could see how you're doing. You want to know how Am Yisrael is doing? There's a barometer. And that barometer consists of three areas: the weather, one's livelihood, and how we're doing with the enemy. If there is rain, the Kinneret is full, and we have enough water, and no major storms, that's a very good sign. If there are major storms, lack of water, problems with the rain, it's not a good sign. Don't blame El Niño. Blame yourselves. Parnasah, the same thing. There's not enough food. Even though there was rain, but it just didn't grow. I think some part of this country has been having problem with a certain infestation. A lot of the trees are dying. Why is that happening? Problems with Parnasah also has to do with our maasim. Third area, problems with the enemy. There's war or there is peace. That has to do with us. Are we behaving or not? So what happens in all these three areas is their indirect relationship to our maasim. Are we fulfilling the mitzvot or not fulfilling the mitzvot? Now this prosperity has nothing to do with the sechar of the mitzvah. The rabbis tell us, schar mitzvah behai al maleka, there's no reward for a mitzvah in this world. What are they talking about? They're talking about the spiritual reward. The spiritual reward is le'olam haba. We don't get that here. Hashem cannot pay us back. It's a different currency. He cannot give us a spiritual reward in a world which is material. That is being reserved for us in Atid Lavo, in olam haba, in the future. What is happening here, the prosperity that we're seeing or not seeing, has to do with something else. Hashem says, I will make your life easier. I will lessen your burden. Life is tough. There are many bills to pay. It's not easy. After all, in the very start, the Torah tells us in Parashat Bereshit, you will have to work hard for a living through the sweat of your brow. But Hashem says, don't worry. You follow the mitzvot, I'll make a deal with you. Everything in nature will cooperate. And you will have an easy time. So that is not the reward for the mitzvah. It's just to make our life a little bit easier. What's the connection between mitzvot and the laws of nature? Those who know Hebrew will understand it. In Hebrew there's an expression, bo naseh chaim. Let's make life. In other words, let's go out and enjoy ourselves. Why does somebody say that? In other words, without that he doesn't have life. What is the meaning, the deeper meaning behind one who says, bo naseh chaim? In nature, what one sees is a structure and rules. And there needs to be this structure and rules, otherwise things would fall apart. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the mitzvot, the chokim, He wanted our life to have content. He wanted our life to be structured. When one says, bo naseh chaim, what is he really saying? I have no structure. I have no content. Therefore, I need to fill it with something. Hashem does not want us to fill our life just with something, with anything. And therefore, He provided us with this structure, with these mitzvot. And Hashem is telling us that if we keep to this structure and to these rules, so will nature that is run by certain rules keep its rules. If we break our rules, the nature will break its rules. What is a tornado? What is a hurricane? That is nature breaking its rules. These are destructive winds. The world was not meant to be like that, where there are destructive forces of earthquakes, hurricanes, and tornadoes. These are destructive. You can call it nature, fine, but how does nature work? By certain rules. And who put these rules into place? Hashem. And the rules are perfect. The rules should be working. The sun rises every day. The clouds come and deliver rain. It can work beautifully and orderly. When it does not, it's because man is breaking his rules. Hashem says, if you break my rules, then the nature will break its rules. Because this is a system that has a structure, and so does your life have a system that is structured. That's the relationship between the two. And I'm using that as a meser. When I use that, it's a meser. It's a message to you that you're doing something wrong. What is that? I'm sorry? There are some individuals who talk amongst themselves and they said, let's make life, let's have a good time, let's enjoy, let's go out and do something. It's an expression in Hebrew. It's because their life is empty. Otherwise you wouldn't say something like that. I'm just giving you an example of people who are trying to fill their lives with some content, where Hashem says, I have given you all the content you need. A Jew, from the moment he wakes up to the moment he goes to sleep, is full of content. Full of content, if you were just to follow those rules. Right? Exactly. When they feel empty, they say that. And that is the meaning of the pasuk, Im lo bariti yomam v'layla chokot shamayim va'aretz lo samti. All the chokot shamayim va'aretz, all the laws of nature, Hashem put them in place as a message to us. That if we maintain this structure, if we follow our rules, the nature will follow its rules. I always ask a very big question when it comes to Parashat Bechukotai. If one is able to observe how Hashem relates to him through nature, in other words, either we do the mitzvot and Hashem reciprocates, or chas v'shalom, if we don't follow the Torah mitzvot, Hashem holds back the rain or the parnasah. If we are able to observe all of this, doesn't that interfere with our free will? Hashem wants us to have free will. If things become very obvious, then that would interfere with our free will. That is why Hashem does not punish on the spot. So wouldn't that interfere with one's free will? The answer is no, for the following reason. There are three ma'arachot, there are three systems in the world. There's the ma'arechet aprati, there's a system for the individual, there's a system for Am Yisrael, and there's a system for the rest of the nations of the world. The individual ma'arechet, the system that applies to us as individuals, is vague. Vague meaning that you don't immediately see the consequences of your actions. Because since you're the only one that's involved, it will become very obvious that regardless of what you're doing, is not working out. Imagine somebody who's mechalel Shabbat, doesn't keep Shabbat, cannot make a living. As soon as he keeps Shabbat, all the jobs start coming in. It will be very obvious to him that it's because of Shabbat. Imagine somebody who eats something not kosher, immediately becomes sick. It will be obvious. Hashem does not want us to be robots. He therefore does not make everything obvious. We have free will. And therefore, because of this free will, a lot of people think that guy is getting away with it. No, don't worry about it. Yesh din v'yesh dayan v'yesh cheshbon. He will have to give an accounting at some point. You're not able to see his entire lifetime. You're only observing him at any given point. We'll just wait till he turns 68. Or whatever. Yesh cheshbon, you're just looking at him right now when he's 20, 30, you know yourself. Just wait. Yesh din v'yesh dayan. There's a cheshbon. With the individual, there is more a possibility that all Hashem's miraculous events will somehow interfere with one's free will. Therefore, we don't see immediately any action. But there is action later on. With Am Yisrael as a whole, there's less of a problem that one may lose his free will. Because more people are involved, there is a chance that one may say, well, ze mikre, it's a coincidence. Why are we having trouble with the Palestinians? Because, listen, they've been there too, and they want a piece of their land. And after all, like some of people are saying, we've taken their land, it makes sense, listen, it's not fair. People can come up with all sorts of ideas and explanations to try to justify what is going on. You can give any explanation you want. That is why we have 120 parties in the Knesset. Each one has another explanation of current events. except for the real explanation, what the Torah in Parashat Bechukotai writes. Why is this thing going on? It has nothing to do with logic. It has to do with something else. It has to do with our behavior. So when it comes to the Marechet of Am Yisrael, there's less of a chance that Hashem's miraculous events, or what He does, will interfere with our free will, because we may be able to attribute it, human nature will attribute it to all sorts of things, other than to Hashem is doing it. Because there's more than one person involved. There's so many people involved. Who are you going to blame? There's so many righteous Jews, Hasidim, observant. Why is there a Holocaust? Why did 1 million children die? They didn't do anything wrong. You see, when there's more people involved, it's harder to find the blame. Free will does not interfere as much. And people can give all sorts of explanations other than the real reason. That is why the prosperity or lack of prosperity, if Am Yisrael does the mitzvot, will not so much interfere with their free will. Now, what did we just say? That people might attribute, when something bad happens, to a mikre, to chance. Right? Coincidence. That is only true if they don't study the Torah. David HaMelech tells us, and we said in Erev Shabbat, and on Shabbat too, Ish ba'ar lo yeda, uchsi lo yavin et zot, v'foroach resha'im ki mo'ese, v'yatzisu kol palei avel nishamedam ade'ad. An ignoramus will not know, and a ksil, a fool, will not understand. Why is it that the wicked prosper? But the reason is because in the end Hashem will destroy them. In the meantime, He's rewarding them for whatever it is that they deserve a reward. David HaMelech uses here ba'ar and ksil, an ignoramus and a fool. Why? Only an ignoramus and a fool think this way? An ignoramus is one who did not learn. A fool is one who does not observe, even though he did learn. One who does not learn the Torah will not understand what's going on. A lot of people complain about the Holocaust, and I'm not going to talk about the Holocaust right now, but just turn to Parashat Bechukotai, turn to Parashat Kitavo and Parashat Nitzavim. In these three parashiyot you have an explanation, at least a partial explanation of why the Holocaust occurred. It's not a mikre. Why does one have a problem with it? Because he did not read what the Torah has to say. The Torah already tells us in advance that this will happen. This will take place, and it describes to us in utter detail what will happen. Then why don't people know this? Because they didn't learn. And what about those who did learn? They're ksilim. They're foolish by not paying attention and observing how there is a relationship here. What is this compared to? To a horse. Why does a horse run faster when you hit him with the whip? Anybody know? He should stop. No, I'm not running. Why does he run faster? So they say because he's trying to run away from the whip. Unfortunately, Am Yisrael has always many times behaved like the horse. When they see a whip, they run away from it. Instead of looking back, wait a minute, who's the one that's hitting me? Maybe I can do something about it. Instead of looking back to see, wait a minute, why am I getting hit over the head? They're trying to run away from it. Trying to find all sorts of solutions to get out of Gaza. That will solve our problems. Wait a minute, ask yourself first of all, who's the one that's hitting you on the head? Don't run away from it. He's hitting you on the head. Where does it say that? Parashat Bechukotai. It says it very, very clearly. Same is true with the subject of tzaddik v'ra lo rasha v'tov lo. Why do the righteous suffer, have a hard time? Why do the wicked sometimes prosper? They make millions of dollars. In Parashat Bechukotai you will find the answers to many of these questions. Anti-Semitism is another good example. People come up with all sorts of explanation why there's anti-Semitism. Yes, there is jealousy perhaps. Sometimes we draw their attention by building mansions. As it is in Latin America, many of the non-Jews complain, there goes the Jew that takes our money. Okay, so you have to be careful not to be ostentatious. But that's not the main reason for anti-Semitism. The Midrash tells us, why is it called Sinai? Ki sham yarda Sinai la'olam. Hatred came down to the world, hatred against the Jew in Sinai. Because we received the Torah. That sets us apart. We're apart, we don't want to mingle and assimilate. They think, oh, the Jew thinks he's better than us. Okay, but they would not persecute us, they would not torture us and kill us. Let them think what they want to think. But if they go after us, it's not because we're different, it's because we're not following the Torah mitzvot. Where does it say that? Parashat Bechukotai. Very simple. So what's the main reason for anti-Semitism? What the Navi says, Ho Yashur shevet api. Assyria will become my whip. I will use them to persecute you, to go after you. In Parashat Bechukotai you will find the word keri. A very powerful word. Hashem says, I will come after you if you don't follow my mitzvot, and I will punish you, and that will be my message to you. If you don't pay attention and you go with me bekeri, I will come after you bahamat keri. The simple translation of the word keri means stubbornness. When you insist on continuing and disregarding the punishment, then things will get even worse. But the rabbis tell us that the word keri also means if we attribute everything to mikre. Keri, mikre. It's a coincidence. Why did this happen? Coincidence. They were in the wrong place at the wrong time. En mikrim. Any Jew that learns Torah knows that there's no such thing called mikre. The same word mikre, mem, kuf, resh, hey, you can change the letters around and call it rak mi Hashem. There is no mikre, there's only rak mi Hashem. It's only mi Hashem. There's no such thing as a mikre. But you might say, well, it's mikre. Mikre, coincidence. No, there are no coincidences. The greatest proof that there is ashgacha, that there is divine providence, is another example that is mentioned in Parashat Bechukotai, is how do you explain, the Torah says, how could you explain that one of you can chase away 1,000 of the enemy? In the 6-day war, we were outnumbered and outgunned. How do you explain that? Unfortunately, they came up with the wrong explanation. The Israeli Air Force, the best one in the world. Yeah, let's see you in the war of Yom Kippur. And that's why we had many casualties in Yom Kippur. You took credit for it? You're the best Air Force? What happened in 1948? You were for sure outnumbered and outgunned. Miracle after miracle. So Hashem said, how do you explain that one can chase away 1,000 of the enemy? Or, unfortunately, the other way around. When we are being persecuted, how do you explain that 1,000 Jews are afraid of one German soldier? They could have taken him down. 1 against 1,000? What's the big deal? But the Torah tells us in the Tochecha that you will have this fear. You will be cowards. You will be led like sheep. This part of the punishment, that we will not have the courage, except for a few partisans that were courageous. But the vast majority, people always ask, why didn't the Jews do something about it? Why didn't they rebel? There were some isolated incidents. But the vast majority did not, because Hashem says you will not. You will be led by one. It's the exact opposite of the blessing. One of you will chase away 1,000 of the enemy. One of them could lead 1,000 of you. Why is Am Yisrael being punished more than anybody else, more than the rest of the nations? You will find a pasuk towards the end of Parashat Bechukotai, Bezacharti et briti Yaakov. Hashem will remember His covenant with our forefathers. That pasuk can be taken as a good pasuk. Hashem Bezat Hashem will remember His covenant and redeem us. But it's also, in some ways, understood in a negative context. And you will understand this with the following mashal. There were once 2 thieves that were caught. One was the son of a thief and the grandson of a thief. And the other one, his father and grandfather were rabbis. And they came to court. The one whose father was a thief and his grandfather was a thief got 1 year in jail. The one whose father was a rabbi, got 2 years in jail. Your Honor, why do I get more than him? We did exactly the same thing. He's a thief and he was born in the house of thieves, and that's all he saw all his life was to steal. That's all he knew. But how could you come to this? Your father was a rabbi. Your family was such a good, reputable family. How could you come to this? You need a more severe punishment. Bezachartit briti Yaakov, the Torah is reminding us, Am Yisrael, you're not some nation out there, barbaric nation, who has no system of laws and rules, hefkerim, mufkarim, wild. You're not animals. You come from Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. Look at your lineage. How could you come to this? How could you allow yourself to do this? Unfortunately, many Israelis have a bad name, bad reputation in Europe. And I'm not going to give examples of what they're known to do. But that's what they're getting themselves, a bad reputation for doing certain things. How could we do it? But one thing we do know, that Am Yisrael, a Jew who does not keep Torah, can stoop to the lowest levels. If he keeps the Torah, he can go to the highest levels. It all has to do with the fulfillment of mitzvot or the lack of fulfillment. The biggest mafia can be Jews. The Torah Kedosha in Parashat Bechukotai describes this deterioration of the Jew, this weakening in his tradition, as lim'os, ma'asu, that they despised my commandments. How does this happen, that a Jew lets go of the mitzvot and eventually despises them, doesn't want to have anything to do with it? And some of them even convert to other religions. And I've talked about this a lot in the past, that it does not happen overnight. And what I want to give you right now, just to finish, is what Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, I believe, says, is basically 3 or 4 steps that leads one from not fulfilling mitzvah to the point of mo'es, He despises it. Umezalzel beze. He ridicules it. And even Chas v'Shalom influences others to let go of it. And he says like this, it has to do with not learning Torah. When a Jew lets go of learning Torah, the next step would be that he will have no knowledge of Torah. He doesn't learn. He will not know. He will not learn. He will stop fulfilling. He will stop fulfilling. He will begin to ridicule. Why will he begin to ridicule and despise? Because he will try to justify why he does what he does. In order that he should have a clean conscience, how could he live with himself? How could he betray his people? How could he let go of what his father worked so hard for and sacrifice his life? He will somehow have to rationalize with him. This is a primitive thing from the past. Today we're in a new age. Somehow, deep down, he knows the truth. Deep down, every Jew knows the truth. But he will come to the point of ma'asu because he stopped learning. He stopped learning, he stopped fulfilling. Now he has to find a way to justify it. Azumoes, he ridicules, he makes fun of it. Rabbi Cook, Zechet Tzadik Lebracha, said that the opposite is also true. If you want to bring back a Jew to his roots, it also has to be a slow process, and it happens in stages. I think I'm quoting him more or less. I don't remember the exact stages, but I think they go as follows. Stage number 1, hekerut. Familiarize him. Introduce it to him. Show him how beautiful it is. Once he's introduced to it, he will want to learn more about it. After he has learned about it, he will appreciate it. He will see the value of it. After he will value and appreciate it, he will come to fulfill it. This all happens in stages. Just like to finish with what the prophet says, that even though Am Yisrael is in the diaspora, scattered all over the globe, from Alaska to New Zealand, wherever you go you see Chabad and Pepsi Cola, there are Jews everywhere. And there are reasons why Hashem scattered us everywhere. But in some ways it's depressing. How will we ever all come back to Eretz Yisrael? So the Navi says, don't worry. Atishkach isha ula merachem ben bitna. Will a woman forget or let go and abandon her baby? Gam ele tishkachna. It may happen that even though they're not supposed to forget and they're not supposed to abandon, but it happens sometimes that you hear a woman let her baby off in a garbage can. How many times have you heard this in the news? Gam ele tishkachna. In other words, even though it's not supposed to happen, hatishkach isha ula, will a woman abandon her little baby? Gam ele tishkachna, but you will hear from time to time that women abandon their baby infants. Gam ele tishkachna. But Hashem says, but I will not let go of you. Even though it happens that a woman will let go her infant and abandon him, Ani, Hashem says, I will never abandon you. And what will happen in the end, right before Mashiach comes, the Navi says, Ki olech Hashem u'me'asifchem. Even though you're all scattered, Hashem will bring you all back, one by one, from country to country to country to country. Not all at once. There's no room for everybody at once. We don't have enough tents and homes to house everybody. But little by little, olech Hashem u'me'asifchem, He will gather you from all corners of the world. And one more thing will happen. This gathering will happen with great mercy. Because there's a big accusation against Am Yisrael. Am Yisrael, unfortunately, today is very distant from Torah or mitzvot. Many of them have intermarried and assimilated. And that is exactly what happened in Egypt. The accusing angel came out and said, you're making miracles to these people. They've completely let go, completely abandoned. What happened back then in Egypt? How did Midat HaRachamim answer Midat HaDin? How did the attribute of mercy answer back? How could you accuse them? They did not do it willingly. If they worshipped idols in Egypt, it's because they did it out of ones. They were forced into this labor. They did not do it on their own. This is what we have to ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu to remember. Not that He doesn't remember, but to point this out. HaKadosh Baruch Hu today, the fact that so many have assimilated, it's not their fault. It's the galut that brought this about upon them. They have forgotten where they come from. So therefore, in your mercy, bring them back. And that is what the prophet promises that will happen. Ki berachamim gedolim akabetzech, that the ultimate redemption, B'ezrat Hashem, will come as a result of mercy. Okay, B'ezrat Hashem, it should happen very soon. Amen. Yeah.
Is it coming up, Rabbi?
No, it's not coming up yet. Yeah, we had it not too long ago. I don't recall right now the exact year, but we still have a number of years before it happens. Yeah. Anyway, B'ezrat Hashem, we're living through very tumultuous times, but very promising times. We just have to be patient and hold on. It's a roller coaster. We're past World War I and World War II. Those who lived through that lived through Gehenom. Let's hope that we don't have anything like it. But it all depends on our ma'asim. The prophets, basically, there are various prophecies. Some that promise that the redemption will be smooth, and some that promise that it will be very tumultuous. It's just like a woman going through labor. Some have it very easy and some need a cesarean. Right? Let us hope that it's a smooth process where the woman delivers the baby on time, quickly, and painless. B'ezrat Hashem. Okay, if there are no more questions, B'ezrat Hashem, we'll continue next week.